Everyone, Ethys here, and Poe, and Cersei you can probably hear stomping around in the background somewhere. So I've been getting lots of questions recently. Decided we may as well do a Q&A, but you read the title, you already know that. Let's dive in then. Question 1, as always, great video, thank you. One thing I'm curious to get your thoughts on is this. Do you think the Warrior of Darkness is going to be a singular threat, or will the story admit to having multiple Warriors of Light/Darkness? I'm interested how this will play out, but with so many storylines going on at once, I feel like some of the action will be pushed farther out, like the Warrior of Darkness actually confronting us. Thoughts? So the story hasn't actually conceded to there being multiple Warriors of Light since before the Calamity. We're always talked about in the singular. And when we're with a party, they're generally just described as able-bodied adventurers under our leadership or employ or whatever. So, I don't know. Some people think that the Warrior of Darkness is literally Derplander, but I think that image was basically used to imply that the Warrior of Darkness is literally the other side of our coin, if that makes sense. Will there be more than one? Maybe, but there's no reason to assume that there will be. So I think you're right, we probably won't be dealing with this threat for a little while yet. Question 2. Great job, Ethys. Please do a video on Ragnarok. Also, since Yoshi P said the Aura are akin to demons, what do you speculate their origin, to be now? So I probably will do a video on Ragnarok at some point. The reason it hasn't been a top priority is that it's a fairly familiar and predictable one for most people, whereas some other relics, not so much. I get plenty of requests for Ragnarok though, so I should stop making excuses. I'll get around to it. Secondly, I know a few people are now speculating that the Aura might be some kind of Hyo Succubi hybrid, but I don't know how that would work. I don't really have any new theories about them, but I can tell you something interesting, which is that their horns they're actually hollow, and they act as a kind of echo chamber to improve their hearing, as opposed to the horns of a dragon, which are just solid bone. Next question. What is the little avatar character you have on your banner? Some kind of ghost? So originally the design, if you saw the old design, it was based on Baron von Blubber from Bubble Bobble on the NES. Oh, that's my finger, I need that. So that was what my concept for this channel was, still a little bit hazy. So now it's kind of somewhere between that von Blubber and I guess a anthropomorphized Dragoon Helm. So not much of a story to it, sorry about that. Next question. Very insightful analysis, thank you. Would you mind doing a review on Varys Zos Galvus? I know it's a bit too early and would greatly wait a bit more after Heaven's Ward to learn more, but not only has his spontaneous arrival in the series left me curious, but seems to have a grand plan in mind, perhaps that of a scale similar to now. So there's not really much to go on by now in terms of his background. I can tell you about his name. So Varys is the word for a carrion crow in Finnish, and Varus is it's Latin for a kind of deformity or sickness or pox, that sort of thing. So whether that implication will have some bearing on the story, I don't know, but I do think his presence in Azys Lla is going to escalate rather very quickly, and we should see plenty more of him. So that'll be coming. All right, next question. Very interesting info on the Duskwights. Thank you. That's an older video. We assume the Elzen were the first settlers in the Shroud, but what of the other races? Where could they have come from across the sea? What lies beyond the horizons outside Eorzea? So the Elzen were indeed the first settlers. Eorzea was theirs alone, basically from the time of the 12, so it's pretty reasonable to say the Elzen are the native Eorzeans. Then we have the Lalafell, who were indigenous to the southern islands, somewhere between the Ciudades and Mericidia. We don't actually know the name of the islands that they came from, I don't think. And also from the south are the Miqo'te. They're originally from Mericidia. And we know that they traveled to Eorzea when the sea froze during the 5th Umbral era. I think it's fairly safe to assume that the Lalafell arrived around the same time, given they were coming from the same direction and would have been traveling over those land bridges in the same way, probably motivated in a similar way by cold and hunger. We know that the Miqo'te were moving north in search of new hunting grounds, basically. Then we have the Rogaden. They emigrated from the seas north of Aldenard, certainly not before the 6th Umbral era, since there weren't any Rogaden as far as we know. Rogaden. They emigrated from the seas north of Aldenard, but not before the 6th Umbral era, since there weren't any Rogadens as far as we know among the Amdapori, the Nimians, the Beladians. It's possible that the Hellsguard of Blathia's spine arrived a bit earlier, since they have a fairly well-established mythology around that area, and physically quite distinct from their seafaring cousins. Then we have the Hjor. The Hjor didn't actually start appearing before, I think, the 6th century of the 6th Astral era, so that was only 1,000 years ago. After the founding of Ishgard, shortly before the founding of Uldar and Gridania. What else? There's Thavner to the east. Then there's the Far East, which is basically feudal Japan. That's where Sasuke came from before he brought ninjutsu to Doma. What else? Oh, there's the New World, which seems to be based on the pre-colonized Americas, which was recently discovered by our good friend Melwib Boothersmeet. Next question. Why did the Allagans need Ultima if they already had Omega, and Omega was more than capable of restraining Bahamut? I've given that some thought as well. What I basically think is that Ultima was most likely an earlier model, and that he was capable of dealing with most primals, but Bahamut was a bigger threat than anything they'd faced, so they had to pull out the big guns with Omega, and Omega was sort of a new, I guess, updated design of the Ultima weapon. Again, I'm sure we'll find out the truth of the Omega weapon fairly soon. Next question, do you think Allagans originated from another planet, perhaps even Lunarians? Their tech seems very alien to Eorzea. No. It's perfectly possible. It might turn out to be the case, but I think it's important to the cycle of the ages and the cycle of hubris that is the history of Hydaelyn, that they came from the same kind of roots as every other civilization that has riven and sort of overstepped themselves and fallen. So they're the kind of warning and foreshadowing for the Amdapor and the Garleans and so on. And so I don't think they should be too far removed from the people of Hydaelyn, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Next question. Do you ever see a possibility of the Warrior of Light having to deal with the image of themselves becoming a primal? Or would we have to be dead for an image to be made? I'm sure that we've been sung about in enough ballads, and we may be venerated in the same way as some of the origin stories. So every precedent that we've seen for the kind of prayer that produces primals, it's been sincere. If we know that Ifrit is already wandering around and we pray to him, our focus is going to be on that Ifrit and not on the potential or idea of Ifrit, if that makes sense. So I think we would either have to be dead or assume dead. And more than ballads, we'd have to be considered to have ascended, or at least the Ascians would have to trick people into thinking that we could be brought back from the dead. Honestly, it wouldn't be the least bit surprising if, say, in a century or two long after our death, there's developed some sort of Warrior of Light worship cult, and someone ends up summoning a primal with our image and name, but that's something that we'll probably never see. Next question. Ethys, how do you feel about the current Warrior of Light equals Primal Theory going around? Paul, I need those. I need those glasses. I need them to read the questions. Hey, you're being very rude. Warrior of Light equals Primal Theory, rather. I don't buy it. It could happen. I feel like it would be a pretty cheap twist. Look, it's as simple as this. All the Sharlayan Archons have these thermometers or ether measuring and sensing equipment, they can look at a primal and they can tell us precisely the kind of drain and consumption they represent. So they spend enough time around us that they would know. So if we are a primal, they're either really bad at their jobs or else they've decided to let it slide. So no, I don't think so. Next question from my boy Drazzy. Hey Ethys, great video as always, thank you. I'm curious to your theory on, which you briefly mentioned, Thornton and his Knights 12. Do you have any theory to why they went to Azys Lla? Was it just a plot device type thing to get us there? As it seemed he had little reason to even go, being that he already had everything he possessed in order to transform. Was it potential to lure the Ascians out? They promised him something. So the Ascians, they were leading Thornton to the Warring Triad under the pretense that they could give him some kind of incredible power. Either to feed Thornton as a primal, or just as an excuse for them to wake the Triad up. So if we had not defeated Thornton when we did, he probably would have moved on to consume the ether of the Triad, but then we'd be in deep trouble, obviously. So yes, we were there for a reason, even though I had the same sort of feeling at the time that what was happening didn't really need to happen there. I think it was all about Thornton basically waiting for the perfect opportunity to get the jump on Ijeom and La Habrea. Next question. This is a really interesting one. This is a really good question. Does the essence or soul of a primal continue after its defeat? Or to put it another way, is the same being summoned each time a primal is summoned, drawing upon the original soul, or is it a new being created with each summoning? I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Ethys. So my theory is that we have the body of the primal being sustained by ether, and the essence or soul of the primal being sustained by prayer. So it depends on what you mean by defeat. If we destroy the body of a primal and it still has people worshipping it, then the soul is going to remain coherent. So if they summon it into a new body, it will be the same soul. However, if the worshippers are killed at the same time, like when we shut down the final call of Bahamut, that soul will dissolve. And if people start worshipping the idea again, it will cause the coalescence of a new soul that will not necessarily have the same sort of properties and motivations. I hope that makes sense. Like I said, great question. All right, next question. I think this is going to be the last one. Hey, Ethys, what is the difference between us being a warrior of light and let's say people like Minfilia who just possess the Echo? Also, what does the title of Archon mean? I noticed that both Louis Soir and Urianger possess it. Also, great video. Look forward to the next one. Thanks and thank you. So I've already responded to this question, but I think other people might be having similar thoughts, so I think it's a good idea to repeat it here. So the first question, I'm going to do a metaphysics video on this, but I guess the nugget of it is that you need the Echo to attain the blessing of light, but not everyone with the Echo is blessed by Hydaelyn, not by a long stretch. The Ascians, for instance, they have the Echo. The Echo, in my mind, is a kind of noumenal coherence and flexibility. Basically, the leash that attaches our soul to our body is a much longer one than that of normal people. And unlike most people, we can sort of detach ourselves from our physical being and survive without being torn apart so quickly. We talked about how little time it would take for Y'shtola to dissolve in the live stream. Well, the Warriors of Light from 1.0 spent a whole 5 years in it without dissolving when Louis Soir sent them adrift. So think about that. Anyway, I think that's all the questions I've got for the moment. Like I say, how often I end up doing these is really going to depend on you guys and how many questions you have for me. So I'll probably prioritize the questions that I'm getting below in the comments here. It's the first place I'll look. But of course, keep asking me questions on my other videos, on Twitter. Email me if you've got something longer you want to discuss, I suppose. And I guess whenever I have another sort of 10 to 20 questions, I'll do another one of these, whether it's in a week, a fortnight, a month. I guess we'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope I sort of clarified some things for some people. I hope this was interesting. But I'm rambling, as always. I'll see you next time.